Hello everyone, welcome back to the Adkup Show. Today we are diving into the world of something called soft power. We will try to understand what it is and why exactly India has lost its charm globally, or probably why India has failed to present itself in a good light around the world. So without wasting time, let's get started. First off, let's understand what is soft power. So, in a world of superpowers, military strength, and economic clout, one form of influence often goes unnoticed. It's not about armies or sanctions, it's about persuasion, attraction, and winning hearts and minds. Now, it's not just about winning hearts and minds, it's also about getting things done without using hard power. And this might be political or economic in nature, which is probably a form of hard power. The mix of all these things is called soft power. Technically, the term soft power was coined by political scientist Joseph Nye in the late 20th century. He defined it as the ability to get others to want what you want through attraction rather than coercion. It's about achieving your goals without any destruction or creating any kind of conflict. So before we explore why India's image across the world is destroyed, let's first understand with few examples of how other countries use culture, media, and diplomacy in a fascinating ways to reshape geopolitics and global perception. From Hollywood to K-pop, soft power shapes how we see countries and ideals they represent. Well, it's not just limited to movies or shows. It involves your festival, arts, history, and also how your country looks like. For example, is your country beautiful or dirty? How is the law and order? How people are behaving in the country? What government has built or is building? All these things add to global perception about any country. Now, this may not directly affect countries' polity at global stage, but it does affect countries' image in the eyes of an average citizen of different countries. Now, let's try to understand some of the most visible aspects of soft power. Number one is cultural diplomacy. Nations often use their art, music, and traditions to tell their stories. This is not just about telling how great your country is, but it's about the art of how you present your story. Now, if you go around the world trying to aggressively preach, then at some point that chain will break and the entire perception will change. Take South Korea, for instance. Of course, it's on decline, but over the past 2 decades, the Korean wave of Hallyu has swept across the globe. K-pop, K-dramas, and even Korean food has become international sensations, making South Korea a cultural superpower. All these things involve a good packaging and continuous storytelling, and that storytelling should be done by the people of that country. Then there's Hollywood. For over a century, the American film industry has been a tool of cultural diplomacy, spreading ideals of freedom, innovation, and the American dream around the world. I'm not saying that things are same like they used to be in the past or there are no flaws in America's point of view, but still we can't ignore the fact that American movies, skit, dramas, humor dominated the world of culture for over a century. France too excels at cultural diplomacy. Its language, fashion, and cuisine symbolizes sophistication, drawing millions of tourists each year and reinforcing its global image. This requires a certain amount of class and standard in society. But it's not just about entertainment. Media plays a powerful role in shaping the global narratives. International news networks act as tools of influence. Al Jazeera gives Qatar a voice in global affairs, while China's CGTN promotes Beijing perspectives on controversial issues. These platforms aren't just reporting the news, they are shaping how the world interprets those news. These platforms are telling different kinds of stories continuously. Qatar, despite being an Islamist regressive country, it's able to cultivate its positive image across the world. Of course, there are questions asked, but still they are doing pretty well. In the digital age, social media has changed the entire diplomacy. Leaders like Narendra Modi, Emmanuel Macron, and even Pope Francis connect directly with global audiences. bypassing traditional media. Now, this is where things get tricky. Democratization of social media gives immense power to an average citizen of different countries. They praise, they criticize, and even hate, and in some cases, hate is beyond any limits, like how they are doing with India. We'll discuss that later in this video. Another major pillar of soft power is international assistance. By providing assistance during crisis, countries earn goodwill and long-term influence. However, in order to fully extract the goodwill, country must do good storytelling through media. Now, this doesn't mean that citizens of country go onto social media and start telling how their country or their leader is great. Something which we often see happening with India. People are just clueless about how to tell a good story. I will further add India's example to it. Take their vaccine Maitri initiative. During the COVID-19 pandemic, India supplied vaccines to over 90 countries, positioning itself as a responsible global leader. Now, why nobody cared about it except for a few countries? There was no media coverage globally. Even Indian media failed to narrate the story about this event. Now, moving ahead and coming to China. So China's Belt and Road Initiative is another example. While critics argue it creates debt dependencies, it's undeniably strengthened China's ties with developing nations by funding roads, railways, and ports. China has invested over $1 trillion in BRI projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe. This is not the only thing. Recently, there are news about America might ban TikTok, which is a Chinese media platform. Guess what happened when this news broke out? The American TikTok users started to shift to another Chinese social media platforms, that is Red Note. How did this happen? Well, China has successfully cultivated its image of a dependable supplier over a period of time. Also, America is not building any new platforms, so people have no option but to look for other platforms. Now, this also means that an average citizen around the world doesn't really care about idealism if the product is good. In this case, India could have built platform, but they didn't. But wait, India does have replica of TikTok. Question is why nobody is using it. Now, education is one of the most sustainable form of soft power. Universities, scholarships, and exchange programs are investments in the future. The US remains a top destination for international students, many of whom return home with a positive perception of America's value and way of life. Over 1.1 million international students studied in the US in 2023, contributing $45 billion to the economy. However, this image is now changing because America is on decline, and we can see that in its soft power as well as in its hard power. Nothing unites people like sports. Events like the Olympics or the FIFA World Cup transcends politics and celebrates shared human spirit. Qatar hosting of 2022 World Cup showed its ambitions on the global stage, while Japan's Tokyo Olympics combined traditions with technological innovation. Even smaller nations like New Zealand gain global attention through sports like rugby, fostering a sense of national pride and international admiration. The US leads the soft power game with its entertainment industry, top universities, and dominance in digital platforms like Google, YouTube, and Instagram. However, controversies over foreign policies and domestic issues like gun violence sometimes tarnish its image. China is investing heavily in soft power, from Confucius Institutes to media outlets like CGTN. Yet its authoritarian governance and human rights concern often undermines these efforts. So until now, we talked about what is soft power, how it's cultivated, and how countries around the world use it to gain influence. Now let's move ahead with our main topic, that is why India lost its global image. To understand and analyze this question, we need to discuss India in different parts. So the question is India really on decline? Well, one word answer is no. India is not on decline politically and even economically, despite having flawed economic policies. Let's understand this with an example. India is currently a largest supplier of oil to EU after EU quote-unquote abandoned Russian oil and gas. This entire shift of supply chain has actually added more value to India's political and economic power. India's influence in EU has increased, and to be honest, India has gained substantial amount of leverage over EU thanks to Russia. The country is growing at an average of 6 to 7% each year, which is fastest in any major economy. Of course, they are struggling to bring reforms, but that doesn't mean that they're on decline. They successfully managed to attract FDIs. However, it's not enough looking at their size and demand. India also somehow managed to successfully navigate through COVID and also through the current global events. So overall, we can conclude that India is not on decline and actually it's rising, however, with many problems when it comes to its political and economic discourse. So the question rises again. Why India lost its global image? Well, the answer to this question involves many reasons which are both external and internal. Let's talk about internal reasons. India is a country which is extremely big with a population of 1.5 billion. We know it's a democracy, which means everything will be slow and chaotic, especially when the GDP per capita is hardly $2,500. It's a multi-party system, which means that there are many voices for when it comes to politics. So nothing is uniform. All these factors have turned India into a low-performing system. Now, this has resulted in poor infrastructure and indisciplined crowd. Indian government, or probably Indian state, never took any interest in telling India's story to the world. And if you don't tell your story, then others will. This brings us to the external factors. For decades, media houses, especially English-speaking media, has done extensive reporting on India. And guess what? The majority of those reporting put India in an extremely dark light. They presented India in such a way as if India and Indians are some sort of demons. This demonization was done by British and American media, and it was done at an industrial scale. Not just demonization of India, but these countries actively interfere in India's internal affairs. They search for negative stories about India, and in a democracy of 1.5 billion, it's easy to get any kind of negative story. Now, you might get a question in your mind, why they did this with India? Well, the answer is simple. They did this with India because India didn't 100% submit itself to them. Actually, India has an extremely deep and historical ties with countries like Russia and even Iran. This isn't encouraged by the US, and this is happening since 1947. It's the year when India got its independence. Countries like the US and the UK assume that India should be on their side because it's a democracy. India refused, so they are constantly attacking India. Now, in Russia-Ukraine conflict, India has tilted towards Russia, and this has made Western countries angry. Hence, they have weaponized every negative thing about India. Currently, India's image is completely damaged, and there is no way to solve this problem. The only way by which India could regain its image back is by working on these internal and external flaws. Now, will India be able to achieve this? Well, only time can answer that question. But one thing is for sure. Demonization of India by US and UK will continue. Finally, this is how much important soft power is, and India is a good case study to understand what happens when a country doesn't pay attention to building its soft power and narrating its story to the world. Of course, soft power isn't without challenges, and countries need to be careful when they tell something about their country. Contradictory actions can harm credibility. For instance, a country promoting human rights but violating them at home weakens its soft power. Similarly, excessive propaganda often backfires, as audiences seek authenticity after a certain period of time. In a world moving towards multipolarity, soft power will become even more crucial. Countries like India and Brazil are emerging as significant players, using their unique strengths to influence global narrative. They should be more careful and present their country as good as possible. 20th century saw the rise in soft power of countries like US, France, Germany, UK, Russia, etc. 21st century is seeing rise in soft power of China, Vietnam, Mexico, etc. Now, I don't include India in this list because we are witnessing India's decline of soft power. However, India is doing better in other spectrum. So as technology evolves, digital diplomacy and global connectivity will redefine how nations wield influence. Soft power is the silent force shaping our world. It's not just about governments, it's about people, culture, and shared values. What do you think? Which country uses soft power the best? And how do you see its role evolving in the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you found this video insightful, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dives into such interesting topics. Thanks for watching. Peace out.